An advocacy service in the state's Riverland says there's a critical shortage of public housing in the region, leaving the most vulnerable people sleeping rough for months at a time. The service says most people are told they'll need to wait at least a year for housing, even when they're placed at the top of the list. Among those cases is a mother who has already been living in a tent with her child for 6 months.
Lisa and her 12-year-old son have set up their home on a vacant block in the state's Riverland. 2 tents under a shed make a kitchen and a bedroom.
Well, we're homeless at the moment. We've been homeless for about 6 months now.
Recently, Lisa was moved up to a Category 1 case by Housing SA, thanks to a letter from a local support service.
We were on Category 2, which was a 3-year waiting, and it went up to number 1. And that's still a 12-month waiting list, roughly. That's what they say. I'm not sure if that's the Renmark area or just the Riverland.
I don't think it is proportional to need. I think there's much more need than they choose to admit to, I think.
Graham McNaughton is a professional advocate, helping people find housing in the region. He says situations like Lisa's are disturbingly common.
It's not great if you're an adult and you're homeless, but you can cope. But a child, it's most unreasonable.
The state government says it's constantly working to improve homelessness and housing services, but concedes it isn't keeping up with demand.
Most people on Category 1 get housed within 6 months. It's very hard to meet. We've got about 20,000 people on our waiting list statewide, so we can never quite meet demand.
As much as I've got my place set up here with my Christmas stuff and that, but I really would love to have a house by Christmas.
Lisa says she was told she'd have to wait a year for a house, but since the ABC started asking questions about her case, one has now become available. Housing SA says it should be ready for Lisa to move into sometime next month.
We could build more houses and there's a wait period of, say, 3 months for someone on Category 1. I think that's the sort of the option that you'd be looking for.
The state government says it plans to build 18 new public houses in the region over the next 2 years. Isabel Dayman, ABC News, the Riverland.
And Australia Day celebrations are still going with a parade and fireworks in Elder Park. Reporter Isabel Dayman is there and joins us now. Isabel, what's happening down there?
Emma, one of the main features here in the city tonight has been a multicultural parade, which is just starting to wrap up here behind me. It's featured dozens of different cultural groups from across South Australia, but with it came a protest from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. They came through in a group chanting "Always has been, always will be Aboriginal land" and holding signs saying "Change the date," clearly expressing anger over the fact that Australia Day continues to be held on January 26th. They then started to form a human blockade up the road towards the festival centre. That caused police presence to increase around that area before the parade was redirected down the other side of King William Street. Everything's now back to normal though. The crowds are starting to gather for that free concert in Elder Park. There'll be a fireworks display later as well to wrap up Australia Day here in Adelaide for 2017. Earlier today we saw citizenship ceremonies held across the state and of course many classic Aussie barbecues. Our reporter Nathan Stitt went along to check out what was happening.
The death of a hospital patient in a head-on truck crash has raised questions about when ambulances should be used for transfers. A new policy was put in place shortly after the Riverland man died, driving himself between hospitals for scans, but the department has denied the two are linked.
A man dead, his wife critically injured, their ute crushed. This is the aftermath of a fatal crash on the Sturt Highway at Monash 2 months ago. Before the crash, the 72-year-old man had been a patient at the Renmark Hospital and was released into his family's care to travel to the Riverland General Hospital at Berry for scans. The ambulance union says he was driving himself there to undergo head scans when he collided with a truck.
Generally, they wouldn't let someone like that drive. However, there are protocols for hospitals. Not every patient who needs a brain scan needs an ambulance.
Protocols have since changed.
I assume it's as a fallout from this case here.
Country Health SA says the changes have standardised the paperwork required for transfers and improved doctor handovers.
This procedure has been in the development cycle for about a year, and the trial's certainly been discussed for about 6 months. So it was on the cards and planned before the very unfortunate event at Monash.
The department says it is not unusual for patients to be released to family members for short trips between hospitals for minor procedures. This case has happened against a backdrop of major changes to the hospital system under Transforming Health, which will see more patients transferred from smaller, less equipped hospitals to a handful of major trauma centres.
It's not inconceivable that hospitals all over the state, as part of the cost containment that comes down from Treasury, would be looking for ways of moving patients without using the ambulance service.
It's not actually cutting costs, it's incurring costs. It's actually about, for the odd occasion where a patient doesn't need to be transferred by an ambulance crew, freeing up ambulance volunteers so that they can not have to wait around.
The coroner will investigate this case. It remains to be seen whether the changes introduced might have averted the patient's death. Isabel Dayman, ABC News, Adelaide.